And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockren, along with you on this Monday morning, getting ready for a 9-game NBA slate. That's the National Basketball Association here on a Monday, heading into Thanksgiving week. The DFS sites have posted the Thanksgiving slate. So for those of you who want to play some DFS and ignore your families, you now have a perfect opportunity to do just that. But first, we have the NBA on Monday, and we have Dave Lockren here to shepherd us through. Dave, how was your weekend? What's new in your world?
Not much, man. It was not a bad weekend, not a bad NBA or NFL week. NFL's been tough at times this year, but this was a nice bounce back from last week. I know you had a decent week as well, so it was nice. It's fun to watch football, and I'm not saying this is not like a joke. It's fun to watch football when you know that you're not out of it from the first 10 minutes. And like last week.
Oh, dude, yes.
Only played tournaments. So if it was cash, it would have been different. But like the Eric Ebron opening half, I went outside and I mowed the lawn. I'm not kidding. That's the last warm day or decent day we had. I went outside and my fiance's brother, he and I are in a bunch of leagues together, and he loves football. He calls me. He's like, dude, I hope you have some Ebron. And he doesn't even play DFS. He played once. And I'm like, listen, dude, and I hung up on him. I don't need, I said, I'll ruin my own day on my own. That's exactly what I said to him. I don't need, because he called me back. He's like, oh, I forgot to tell you, so-and-so is having a monster game as well. You know what? Just don't let me ruin my own day. I really don't need your help. I can ruin it on my own. You know what I mean? I'll check the scores when I go inside. I already know it's a bloodbath. I don't need somebody else calling and telling me how great of a play this person made when I have thousands of dollars that are being flushed down the toilet and he's just having a grand old time on his couch.
It's something our former employer would talk about, sweatikit. Now this is the opposite end of it. It's when somebody you're dealing with.
It's not intentional. Like he doesn't really know. It's not like he really put all the pieces together. He's a good guy. He just wanted to talk football, but bad timing.
Right. Last week I've had a tendency to, when my the 1 o'clocks, the first halves go poorly, I'll tweet out a Bill Belichick gif with we're on to whatever the next week is. So my on to week 11 was very early last week. I think it was 5 minutes after that second Ebron touchdown. I was like, all right, we're moving on. Because I had 90% Doyle last week, I think, something along there. So Doyle had a decent week this week. Not great, but should be continue to be a target there. But yes, absolutely, a better week this week for me. Funny,
Ebron, in case you're wondering, you kind of get rewarded for not chasing those points, right? Ebron had 0 receptions in this game. You know how many times he was targeted? Zero. And he threw a pass. Frank Reich ran like a variant of the Philly special, a little bit different, where Ebron almost threw a touchdown to Luck. And I'm thinking, this son of a bitch, Frank Reich is trying to ruin our lives. He's trying to get him, rushing touchdowns, receiving touchdowns, now passing touchdowns. Andrew Luck laid out for that too, but fortunately it was a little too far. Just crazy. His only look of the game, his only factor into the box score was 0 for 1 passing.
We will get to the NBA shortly. I would assume you didn't see this. Rutgers played Penn State on Saturday in football, and actually hung tough with Penn State, and probably should have won the game. But Rutgers ran the Philly special. Like, they ran at the goal line, and they executed it perfectly. Well, beautiful. So the end comes around, gets the toss, left-handed throw to the quarterback who's in the end zone wide open. No one even within light years of him. Backpedaling, goes up to catch, just drops it. Just full on drops it.
So it was executed perfectly until he had to catch it.
Yep, just drops it. And there, in a nutshell, is everything you need to know about Rutgers football in one play. But let's get on with our show here, 9 games on an NBA slate. As always, Dave, you have a pretty good handle on injuries. I know Russell Westbrook is already deemed out, both because of the ankle injury and because of welcoming twins. Is it twin daughters into the world?
I know I know there's a new addition to the family. I don't know how many.
I don't know if this is a type of Westbrook is still away from the team due to the birth of his daughters.
That would do it.
Roto World unless he's celebrating like a 4-year-old too. He's like, "Hell, we have a second one. Let's let's just have a party." Oladipo, I believe, is still questionable. What injuries do you have your eye on for the write-up when you write the deep dive on Monday?
Yeah, so Westbrook being out against the Kings is a really interesting one, and the Kings are hanging tough. The Kings are playing decent basketball right now, right? I think you just look at the last game the Kings, the last game the Sacramento played, they got blown out towards the end against the Kings, but aside from that, they've been playing pretty decent basketball and hanging tough. So you'd expect that game to be close. I'm seeing Westbrook doubtful, and then I'm seeing him out, but I don't imagine he plays here. It wouldn't make much sense. Wesley Matthews is doubtful. Barea and Powell, not that Powell's very important, but those are the other two Dallas players that remain questionable. Pau Gasol is still doubtful to play. Davis Bertans is questionable. Avery Bradley questionable. Mbah Mute is still out. I don't even know when to expect his return. Alex Poitras, who actually started last game, is out or doubtful, and Taurean Prince with that Achilles injury is also doubtful. So that's going to open up more minutes at the two forward positions for sure. Oladipo questionable. Looks like MKG is out as well, and I think that's it. I think that's it. Yeah, those are all of them.
I appreciate that Embiid has a swollen hand from slapping around other centers all season long, but
yeah, he's pretty decent. Pretty decent.
Something to keep an eye on. But let's go position by position as we always do. We'll mix in some talk about the individual games, the over-unders, the spreads, and pace stats, usage stats along the way. You get all of that and more in the deep dive every Monday, Wednesday, Friday with Dave, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday with Adam Scher, also known as Ship My Money DFS, or I'm a Boss over there on FanDuel. Can't get enough of it.
Oh, what a name!
Can't get enough. Not I'm the boss. I'm a boss. Like I'm one of them.
Yeah,
I'm one of the bosses.
He's the guy you meet at the end of a video game.
He's Bowser. Oh, that's amazing. Anyway, let's continue on here. Well, let's start. Don't forget deep dive every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday with Adam. You can get 1 week free of content there, and it's a good week to do it with the Thursday slate for NFL by using the promo code EARLYBIRD, one word. So, Dave, here on this slate, assuming Westbrook is out, just because that is all signs I'm seeing, you have Kemba up to 9,900. Coming off of that epic 60-point outing against the 76ers, 81.25 DraftKings points. He's had a gigantic season. His usage rates are up. He is taking a ton of shots, but he's close to 10K here against the Celtics team that has been very good defensively. I know to start the year they struggled a bit, but they have rounded into form where pretty much everyone expected them to be. Then you have Oladipo, Ben Simmons, Drew Holiday, Kyrie at 8,400 on the other side of that matchup against Walker. Has had some dynamic outings as well. And you have Schroeder, Booker, and we go on from there. Top end, are you willing to pay for Walker coming off of this epic outing, or do you think this is an easy fade spot at 9,900?
It's a super easy fade. And Kemba Walker has been shooting spectacularly. I mean, just that last game was outstanding. And Butler's a good defender. Butler, after the game, Jimmy Butler said, he's like, yeah, but Kemba put 60 on me, man. He's like, that doesn't happen very often. He did get that big block when it was needed most, but yeah, it was unreal. And, unlike Donnie Mitchell, who, if you remember that game he played, and oddly enough against the Sixers, where he took 35 shots, made 13 of them, finished with 31 points, 0 assists on 13 for 35 shooting and 1 from 11 for 3. Kemba doubled Mitchell's scoring on less field goal attempts, right? That's really impressive. Kemba never misses free throws either. Like when he goes to the charity stripe, they're going in. It's crazy. So I love him. He's a phenomenal player. He's evolving into one of the best overall scorers in the league, no doubt. But I'm not paying 9,900 for him against a very good Boston defense. At this rate, you're going to need a really big game. It's not to say Kemba can't do it, but I don't see it happening here. You have Anthony Davis on this slate. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo on this slate, who's been pretty disappointing lately, if we're going to be fair. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his last 6 games, he's finished with 51 or fewer fantasy points, and 7 of his last 10. You might say, well, why are you looking at that? I'm looking at that because when a guy's this expensive, it's something you have to at least discuss. You also have Joel Embiid against Phoenix at home. You have Paul George, Paul George has been putting up monster numbers with Westbrook out. So I think you understand what I'm saying here. Even Blake Griffin is interesting against Cleveland. He's coming off a 60 fantasy point game. So you got a lot of really, really quality, high-priced players that I think it makes it very possible just to fade Kemba and move along. Ben Simmons, I just want to mention him because I talked the one day about, I think that Butler's arrival could actually help him a little bit. And then he has a terrible, terrible game, and I look stupid. And I was pretty quick to just backpedal on my original take the L on it and move on. And then the next game, he goes for 23, which is a season high, 11 and 9. And this is kind of what I expected, right? Like, I don't expect him to go for 20 plus points every game, but I really don't think that Butler's going to hurt him as much as most people do. It's really just a matter of whether or not Ben Simmons has any interest in playing. And that's what it comes down to. And when he does, and when he's being a little bit aggressive, you're getting great games from him. He also shot 9 of 11 from 3. I'm going to have a little bit of Ben here. He's sub 9K on DraftKings, a really bad Phoenix backcourt defense. I am not scared at all about that defense. So, yeah, Ben Simmons is someone that, while you're not playing him in cash, I'm going to have some exposure. I still think the upside is there. He still has the 55, 60 fantasy point upside, and I don't mind getting in on that under 9K. I also think Mike Conley's a pretty interesting spot too, Dan. And in this home game against Dallas this season, it's funny. I talked to Rick Kamla. We have him on as a weekly guest on NBA. He's from NBA TV on Sirius on Awesemo Radio. We have him on once a week, and he's been a great guest. And he's got some inside information that always helps. And he's a smart guy. And he had brought up Dallas and their home and road splits. And he's definitely not wrong. Like, their home and road splits are pretty crazy this year. If you look at the Dallas Mavericks at home, their offensive rating is 3rd behind the Warriors and Bucks, Dan. 3rd in the entire league. Their defensive rating, I think, is 13th, which is fine. But 3rd best offensive rating in the league at home. On the road, the Dallas Mavericks rank 27th in offensive rating. Think about that.
Wow.
3rd. And now, look, I get it. Not a huge sample here, but that's still at least worth looking into with a bunch of, when a lot of the guys in this team are young, it's not crazy to think that they thrive off of, all that energy at home. 3rd and 27th. Just huge. I think Mike Conley here at home against Dallas, team that's playing on the road, is a really good in a really good spot. His ceiling isn't massive, but I like his floor in this game quite a bit, and I think his price point's very fair as well. I also like De'Aaron Fox. I mean, De'Aaron Fox is down to 6,100 on DraftKings. To me, that's just outrageous. How is De'Aaron Fox? He might be the best value at the position. Like, Dan, he's averaging. Let's just take his fantasy points. He's averaging 38 fantasy points per game. He's averaging 32.3 minutes per game. And per minute, he's averaging 1.17 fantasy points per minute on the year, which is really solid. And he's 6,100.
I don't see a reason why this price drop has happened. Like, the matchup doesn't seem to scream it. Even whether Westbrook is in or out, they're at home. I don't get it. I saw this when I started looking over this slate. It makes little sense that he's down $800 game over game, which, that can change, but there's no reason. This isn't them playing against the slowest paced team in the NBA. This isn't anything that makes sense. So I'm right there with you with De'Aaron Fox. Yeah,
it's just, I really don't understand the price drop whatsoever. maybe okay, semi tough matchup, but like this dude is. I clicked on his game log to see if maybe I missed a couple recent really bad games, but no, not one bit. Memphis, tough matchup, great pick and roll defender in Mike Conley. He had 46 fantasy points, 23 and 10. He only played 25 minutes in a blowout against Houston, had 26.25, 39 against San Antonio, 38 against the Lakers, 44 against Minnesota. I just don't really know how you I don't know how you overlook that. I simply don't. I mean, I also think Trae Young is a pretty solid play as well, and you're likely going to get him with Taurean Prince off the court, who's got a pretty hefty usage rate. Two really rough games for Trae Young, but one of them was a massive blowout. The other one, his minutes were shortened against Indiana. I'd have to look into that to see why he didn't get any run. I don't know. Maybe Jeremy Lin got hot off the bench or something, but he's still too cheap. Yeah, Lin played 24 minutes in that game, had a really solid outing. I think Trae Young is still too cheap, though, in a matchup that doesn't concern you much against the Clippers. I know you talk Pat Beverly and everything, but if you come out there and you get the minutes and the game's semi-competitive, I don't have an issue with it in tournaments. I still much prefer De'Aaron Fox, though, just so we're clear. Really, Trae Young's just a price play. De'Aaron Fox is someone I probably would have played around 7K in this spot. In terms of value, though, nobody jumps off the page at me from a value standpoint. You have the Cleveland guys. If you want to go there, I'm not super high on them at now that they're above 5K. They have been, but still not really super high on those spots. Shelvin Mack's another guy that's been getting some good run. He's probably going to play 28, 31 minutes, and he's actually been pretty decent, right? You're getting decent numbers from Shelvin Mack for the most part, playing high 20s in minutes every night with Dillon Brooks out, and getting the bulk of the run as all of the backup point guard run and some minutes at the 2 alongside Conley. I'm not Jeremy Lin in tournaments. If this game blows out, he's starting to get more run consistently. I don't know how long it lasts, but it is there. So he'd be another guy that you could throw into the mix. And a little risky now that his prices come up, Dan, and here's the last guy. And everything else will be in the deeper dive, of course, and the deep dive and the deeper dive. Gilgeous-Alexander, his minutes have come down, which really sucks, but it's such a good matchup. I'll have to look more into the rotations and jot all that down in the deep dive to see if it's something I'm concerned about.
Right.
Or, he had foul trouble in the one game, a lot of foul trouble. And then against San Antonio, I'll look into it 27 minutes. But you get what I'm saying here. It's a really great matchup, and he's actually looked really good when he's getting the run.
All right. Really points out what do you expect? I know you're not big on projecting ownership, not something you try to do on a regular basis, but do you think the masses will see Fox's price tag and will be there? Or do you think this is a spot where maybe you get him at a cheaper price point at lower ownership?
It's a really good question. People don't love playing De'Aaron Fox, that's for sure. But he's really cheap. This is real cheap. So I think he's got to have some ownership. Now, I don't think he'll have enough. He won't have as much ownership as if, like, say, Mike Conley was this cheap, right?
Okay. Yep.
Some of these other guys. But I still expect to see quite a bit of ownership. The funny thing is, though, people would pile on Mike Conley in this spot, and De'Aaron Fox would see less ownership. But De'Aaron Fox has been better and more efficient than him on a per-game basis this season. So, yeah, right now, Fox, and we haven't gone through all the positions, but right now, Fox is definitely the best point per dollar guy right now. You can't. It's way too good of a. He could have a bad game, and you're still like, all right, not bad. He's an absolute cash lock. Don't think twice about it.
All right, let's move on to shooting guard next. And as I say every time Dave and I record together, if I'm recording with EMAC or Adam, shooting guard, you got a lot of MPE here. So the beauty of that on DraftKings, and no, we don't on this podcast focus on FanDuel a ton. I know Josh does a lot of FanDuel on the NBA strategy show, which is free over there on YouTube. And you get that throughout the day over in Slack chat, which you need to be a member of Awesemo.com to access that. The beauty of MPE here, obviously, is the upside of point guards, meaning assists, steals, and points out of the point guard spot, but eligible at shooting guard. And shooting guard's just deeper. There's more talent here, more players that we can choose from each and every game. So we take a look across the shooting guard position and see top-end talent like DeRozan, Drew Holiday's at 8,700. Dennis Schroeder is priced up. So obviously over the course of Westbrook being out and Schroeder getting 30-plus minutes, he's up to 8,100 in this matchup with Sacramento. Butler, Booker, Chris Middleton is at 7,400, Mitchell and Bledsoe, and then Murray and Lou Williams. Let's see who rounds out our 6K price, and Gary Harris. So Gary Harris is our first shooting guard only eligible player, and he's our last 6K or above, and we'll stay there for this first set of shooting guards. Do you go back to the Jimmy Butler well? Is he still underpriced at 7,900 for the Philadelphia 76ers?
That's tough. All right, so let's break it down from the top, and then we'll get there. So shooting guard might have a little bit of value, so that could be cool. Drew Holiday is probably going to be your highest projected guy here. And then you're going to get some probably DeMar DeRozan. If Oladipo's got a tough matchup, I'm not huge on that. And I don't think you want to take that risk right now anyway. So Jimmy Butler against Phoenix is the question. Yeah, I think Jimmy Butler is viable. I mean, it's funny. He didn't have a great game last time out, but there's no question that Brown is not going to have any problem giving him big minutes. Maybe not Thibodeau minutes. I get that. But at the same time, he's not that expensive. Okay, so let's look at it like this, Dan. In 3 games with the Sixers, the first one, I don't really even count that because he was just coming in. He didn't want to be too aggressive. He hasn't taken a lot of shots. He's taken 12, 15, and 4. But I still don't see any way that Butler is only taking like low double digits, like 11, 12 shots per game. I expect that to climb. I also think Butler's going to have a pretty low floor with the Sixers too, though, right around that 28, 30 fantasy point range. Against Phoenix, it's a good spot, but he's simply a tournament play because you still have Embiid. And Embiid, this is still Joel Embiid's team. There's no question. They're also 12-point favorites. They've been playing a lot of overtime games, a lot of close games lately. So that's where I am with Butler. I will have some tournament exposure to him. And this isn't to sound like a cop-out, only because it's a very good matchup, and Butler is still a very good player. But there are many ways that this could go wrong. There are probably more ways this could go wrong than it could go right, if that makes sense.
Yep. I get it. And I think that's a more than reasonable take. And what it's funny on the podcast and in your write-ups, less so. And then on the show, even less so, but you're measured, and you're measured for a reason. We're more than 20 hours away from setting lineups as we record, and lots of things can change and value can emerge, and the way matchups can be broken down can change as well. And Embiid being out or in or whatever it might be. But even further, there's nuance. It's not just A or B most of the time. So I appreciate that here. And I think as if people watch the progress of your analysis from the pod to the write-up to the show, there's obviously some evolution there amongst the decisions as you go through. So Butler's at 7,900. Above him, you have Schroeder, Holiday, DeRozan, and the still questionable Oladipo with the knee injury or knee issue. I don't want to say injury just because it's a flare-up of the knee issue. Anybody above Butler that you like, or do you see yourself spending down here at shooting guard?
I think Devin Booker is still really reasonably priced. That's why I like Booker a lot more than Butler here. And you take a look at Devin Booker, and he's going to have some rough games. They're going to get blown out in spots. There's no question. But he's also going to have some monster games, and he's not even shooting around 20 times recently. I think this is one of those games where that changes. If they get blown out, it won't. But you look at his minute totals, Dan. Look at listen, this is Booker's minute totals over his last 10. And there have been some blowouts here. 38, 29, 36, 35, 36, 43, 35, 37, 37, 39. Huge run. I mean, huge run for Devin Booker. You're talking about a guy who is in a game like this. And look, Sixers defense isn't bad. He's going to have to face some Jimmy Butler defense. But as we saw with Kemba Walker, it's not like this can't be beat, right? It's not like you can't put up big numbers. He's got a 31% usage rate and a 36% assist rate this year. Easily a career high, 11% higher than last year's assist rate. I think Devin Booker's a really good play at a shooting guard position that I'm really not that enthusiastic about. I mean, you have Donovan Mitchell, who I guess is fine, but you're just not getting peripherals from him.
Yep.
And Devin Booker acts as the lead facilitator and leading scorer on this team, so you like him more. Butler, we talked about those issues. Oladipo, I worry about the injuries, and Utah is still no pushover defensively. DeRozan and Holiday are a bit too pricey for me, so you really end up landing on Booker. Dennis Schroeder is not a bad play, and he's definitely come on strong recently. You're seeing some great numbers from him, at least, very reliable numbers from him. But I don't want to say he's priced out of consideration, but it's definitely a little prohibitive up above 8K, while Devin Booker is 7,700. So I'm going to keep coming back to him. It kind of doesn't matter where I land. I'm going to be playing a whole lot of Devin Booker. And also, you mentioned Gary Harris. I think Gary Harris is reasonably priced. I don't have a problem with him, but I don't like the fact that Milwaukee struggles more against guys that jack up a lot of mid-range shots. They do a great job of protecting the perimeter, kind of sealing it off. 35% of Harris's shots are from three, so it's not an extraordinary amount, but it's a good amount.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy totally relies on scoring to produce. Don't hate Harris, but again, coming back to one Devin Booker, and that's kind of where I feel here. Like the value at the position, there's not much. Batum's under 5K. I'm assuming he'll get some ownership, even though it's against Boston. But this is where he should be priced. Like Batum's not giving you big numbers this year, so I don't really see this being a spot where, oh wow, he's so underpriced. No, not at all. I'd rather play Tariq Evans, who I understand last game did not have a great game, even with Oladipo only playing 4 minutes. But at least I know that Evans is capable of putting up big rebounding numbers, can get to the rim, is going to be at least remotely aggressive, whereas Batum is afraid of touching the rock. So yeah, that's definitely someone I'll be considering. And then Kevin Huerter is going to, as much as I don't like playing this guy, Dan, if Prince and Poitras are both out, Huerter might play 36 minutes in this one, and that's going to force us to consider him at nearly minimum salary with one of the highest usage guys off the court in Prince.
I haven't looked, and I'll admit that here, and I don't know that you have. Are Batum and Lamb eating into each other's minutes here? Is this an ebb and flow for the Hornets where Lamb's hot and Batum seeing less minutes, or is this more just the way these games have sort of shuffled out over the past couple of outings?
Well, is it you're talking about minutes, or you're talking about production? Minutes, right?
More minutes, yeah. More minutes for Lamb, yeah.
I really have to look into this because it looks like
we can put a pin in that. We can put a pin in it.
Well, no. I might have a reasonable explanation for you.
Oh, how about that?
Look at his minutes over the last 10. The one thing that pops out to me is that he's averaging about 32 minutes per game in 8 games where he hasn't faced Philly. In 2 games against Philly, he played 19 and 17 minutes. 19 and 17 minutes. The other ones, 29, 34, 33, 26, blowout, by the way, would have played 30 plus, 36, 32, 31, 31. The only 2 games where he saw no run was in both of them against the Sixers. Now, the thing there is that because it was matchup based against the Sixers, or is that because 2 of his last 4 games have become against the Sixers, and this could happen in any game without any notice? So, I mean, I have no interest in him anyway, so I probably won't dig too deep into that in a terrible matchup against Boston.
Got it. All right. That sounds more than reasonable. Let's move to small forward next. And you have Giannis at the top, and then Paul George, who obviously becomes a bit of a usage monster with Russell Westbrook out of the picture, but a price tag that's up above 10K. He's at 10.4 now. Seen it rise from, 8,900, I think, 5 games ago, up to 10.4 now against Sacramento in this matchup. He has 4 of 5 last outings have been over 50 points, with the fifth being 49.75. So really being a dick there with my summation of his outings, but still, hey, statistically accurate. Numbers don't lie, folks. DeMar DeRozan at 9,100. Ben Simmons here, obviously multi-eligible across point guard and small forward. Tobias Harris against Atlanta, I think will probably be fairly highly owned just because the stacks against the Hawks have become a very prevalent part of DFS to start the early season. Mirotic is small forward eligible, and then we move on. down to Gallinari, Tatum, Gordon Hayward, and on we go. Who do you like here? Is it a Paul George or Giannis night? I know Giannis is somewhat matchup proof. Price tags for George and Giannis, and then we move on from there.
Yeah, there was just one more guy I wanted to mention at the other position was Bogdanovic. Look at his minutes lately, Dan, in games that aren't blowing out, 25 and 24 minutes. Put him around 25 minutes in a game I expect to be close, maybe more. I could see him playing upwards of 28 here, assuming he's working his way back from injury. And he's getting a good amount of shots up. So Bogdanovic over his last 3 games has a 26% usage rate with 1.08 fantasy points per minute. He's really cheap. And it's very possible that we could see close, not 30 minutes, of course, but maybe 27, 28. And he's really cheap. So I think that's a pretty solid option there.
Which Bogdanovic? Bojan or which one are we talking about?
Yeah, Bojan. Oh, wait. Well, there's Bojan Bogdanovic, and I'm assuming it's Bogdan. I don't even know how to.
They're both on the slate. Which one are we talking about? I need which
oh,
one?
You know what? It is. It is Bogdan. Well, that's what I said. Bogdan.
Okay, Bogdan. Okay.
Bogdanovic.
Right,
yeah.
All right.
Not Bojan.
Sure. I want to make sure we're on top of our game here.
That's okay.
What's amazing is I bring up Paul George and Giannis, and you're going to Bogdanovic, but.
Well, I didn't want to forget about him as a value option.
All right.
Because I think a lot of people are just going to go to Kevin Huerter, and at not that much more expensive, you can go there, and he definitely has more upside. Anyway, with Giannis, the ceiling is just always there. I mean, he has the 80 fantasy point upside, and I think that's one of the reasons why people like myself and Adam Shar, who does the deep dive with me every day, that's why we chase these points or chase Giannis in tournaments, because it's not even really chasing. It's what you can get, right? You're not chasing an Eric Ebron game. You're chasing a guy that's done it so many times in the past. And I'm gonna have some Antetokounmpo today. Definitely. He played again, or he faced Denver already this season in Denver. And the one concern with this matchup is that Denver does a phenomenal job of limiting opponent rebounds. So I don't love that. I don't love that he might not rack up double-digit rebounds, even though that's something he's done so well all year. No team is allowing fewer rebounds per game to their opponent than the Denver Nuggets. So, yeah, worries me a little bit, but I will always have tournament interest in Giannis because it doesn't matter who he's facing. He has upside to do so much more. Paul George is not cheap by any stretch, and it's going to be tough to get up here. There's no question. But he has been good enough that he at least warrants some consideration or warrants us discussing him and whether or not he's worth it. Because, if this game is close, George is playing 38, 40 minutes. Almost no question. Almost undoubtedly, he's getting 38 to 40 minutes. And he's posting big numbers, right? Since Westbrook went out, the first game was against Cleveland. He's played, 6 games without Westbrook. And 4 of them are above 50 fantasy points. 3 of them are above 57 fantasy points. It's not to say the upside isn't there. It certainly is there, Dan. I'll throw it to you real quick. What do you make of Paul George? I think people don't like paying up for him, but when Westbrook isn't there, it really does make a sizable difference.
Yeah, I think that's the point, and we sort of have to throw biases out the window price point wise, right? And usage is there, minutes are there, all of the sort of check boxes we talk about each and every game make total sense. And it's a situation for George overall. It really comes down to, for me, what value we get. George isn't somebody that I want to start my lineup construction with. He's not the guy that I'm saying I'm going to lock in and say he's not Anthony Davis. He's not Giannis. He's not LeBron or Russell Westbrook or Hart. Like, there are just enough demerits to what he can give me each and every game. With that said, though, I'm more than comfortable with him at this price point if the rest of my lineup comes together, if that makes sense. I'm not starting my lineup construction here, but I'd be happy to have him in and wouldn't balk at paying 10-4 for him in this matchup and with the usage he should have.
Yep, I think that's pretty fair. By the way, with Westbrook off the court this season, Westbrook off the court, Paul George, like if you're questioning whether or not he is worth paying that much, well, take a look at his numbers. He has this is with Schroeder on the court because that's more relevant. 31.1% usage rate, 1.37 fantasy points per minute, 23% assist rate. Those are really solid numbers. And if you take Schroeder off the court, I think you know what to expect here. The performance is only going to get better, at least the usage. 32% usage rate, 1.34 fantasy points per minute, basically the same assist rate. So actually, it's almost identical with Schroeder on the court, and that's a good thing. I don't know where I'm at on George yet, but I can tell you that I'm not writing him off before doing at least a little bit more research, and I'll leave it at that. Tobias Harris against Atlanta, you mentioned him. Solid play here. No issues with him. I also think Danilo Gallinari is a perfectly fine play. Gallo does not have crazy upside. You're never going to get just monster slate breaking games from him, but he can give you that 40 fantasy point, high 30 fantasy point game that you're looking for, especially against Atlanta. And they're missing one of their best wing defenders in Taurean Prince as well. So good spot for him. I never love him though, because you're not getting huge numbers from him. It's really, really rare that fading Gallo is going to kill you. The thing is though, there's just not a ton at small forward. It's really not a great position. I mentioned Bogdan, not Bojan Bogdanovic. He's also small forward eligible. I'm going to play him some because it frees up cap space at a bad position. Tyreek Evans, if Oladipo is out, is another guy who I'm definitely going to have interest in. And I'd expect him to play more than the 24 minutes he played last game when Oladipo played only 4 and left. So yeah, value at small forward and shooting guard that you generally don't get. I don't have a problem going down close to the bottom at this position. If you're not playing Giannis, or maybe you want to run some Ben Simmons in there or Tobias Harris, one of those guys. If you're not playing them, I actually don't, or Paul George, of course, it's really not that great of a position. There's no one that stands out as a lock. I'll tell you that much.
Well, then let's take the opportunity to move on to power forward. As we've said many times over, you get the deep dive from Dave Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Early bird is your promo code. You get a week for free. So if you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, maybe you've listened to Dave and I for 5 years now, which is nuts in and of itself, but you listen to this podcast, check it out. You check it out for a week. You sign up. You can cancel on day 7, right? Go in, cancel, make sure you cancel the subscription. You see what it's worth. I think you'll find that the write-ups, the projections, the ownership projections, you do get Alex's grades that he does, and there's a lineup builder that I think is an intriguing model for building a lineup, a little bit different than what you may see on other sites. There is also a Fantasy Cruncher add-on, so it's not as if you don't have that option as well. So some interesting pieces that really get you to a different way of thinking about certain lineup construction, and you get access to the likes of Dave and Adam, and you get Spags, and you get Josh, and you get Ed Fear, and you get Emac and myself and the others. So you can always tag them in Slack chat over there at awesemo.com as well. So use that promo code earlybird as we roll on to power forward. Anthony Davis is $300 more than Giannis here. It feels as though, if healthy, Anthony Davis should put up 55 to 60 points, DraftKings points, I should say, not NBA points. DraftKings points on any given slate. It seems as though the talent level and the matchups are pretty irrelevant for those opponents he has, and he's sitting there between 50 and 60 DraftKings points. Now at 11-6, that comes into question whether or not that's enough really from a lineup construction perspective to get you to a GPP winning lineup. Probably not. But the upside's clearly there on any given night. Matchup with San Antonio here, a front court that has LMA, it has Powell. I know New Orleans is playing a variety of bodies in the front court. How do you like this matchup? Is this one that stands out? You look at an interface like DraftKings where the opponent rank is second for the San Antonio Spurs front court. This feels like a plus matchup for AD. Am I wrong in that assumption? And is he the top expensive player on this slate?
Right now, he is mine. Yeah. San Antonio on paper has been good against centers, but I'm really not that worried. I'm just not too concerned about the defense or the matchups that Davis is going to be going against. I'm not concerned about Aldridge at the 5. I'm not concerned about about Jakob Poeltl. None of these guys really concern me. And Pau Gasol, not that it would matter. He's a human pylon anyway. But they have done a good job against centers. But I'd like to see who they've played and how many good centers they've faced, because this does not concern me even slightly. By the way, Anthony Davis over his first 6 games had a 26.3% usage rate. And we talked often about how that needs to climb in order for us to really trust him. Over his last 7 games, he has a usage rate of 31%. So at least we're seeing that climb with 1.45 fantasy points per minute. So yes, his usage rate increased 4%, and his per minute production increased by 0.02. It was 1.52 through his first 6 games. Not a huge improvement there, but usually efficiency goes down when you're when you're handling the ball more. Well, in terms of Davis, fantasy points per minute wouldn't really matter because you're just taking more shots. So you can still be less efficient and still have better per minute numbers. But I still think that this is a really positive sign right now. I really like to see this. And you know what, Dan, as you mentioned, he's the type of guy that goes out there when healthy and should give you what? He should give you 55 to 60 on a day where he's just okay. Well, you get him right now on this run, playing well, healthy. That's a totally different story. You always had the concern that he leaves early, but I just think you have to consider him here. And plus, it's not like Giannis Antetokounmpo has been crushing either. So yeah. And last thing I'll say, his true shooting over his first 6 games. So let's take a look at some efficiency numbers. Was 55.9. Since his usage has gone up almost 5%, it's at 58.2. So his efficiency's actually gone up with his usage. That is a very good sign.
What about the rest of power forward here? What do you got some of your top end plays beyond Giannis and Anthony Davis? Are there names such as Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, Mirotic?
Not very nice, is it?
It's such a bad position. I don't get
really
it.
Is.
I don't. Is it that the stretch fives have become such a part of the game, and I don't get how power forward has become such a what I used to call small forward, the barren wasteland. It just feels as though it's a lot of backups and a lot of guys that you're hoping for 25 DraftKings points on, maybe a block or two, an assist or two, and 18 points. It's really crazy to see.
No, it's tough.
Montrezl Harrell, what are we doing here? What's happening? Power forward.
The L is silent, by the way, but
it's for fun.
I don't know, man. I don't know. You can never be so sure. Blake Griffin, he's expensive. Very, very similar. Yeah, just keep moving on here. Keep plowing forward. Blake Griffin is similar to Paul George in that the price is probably a little bit too high, but I think it's also going to scare a lot of people off. Blake and George, and both of them have good matchups. So, are they too expensive? Probably a little bit. Do they have really good matchups? Yeah, there's no question about that. I don't know if I get up to Blake Griffin. It's going to be tough for sure. But just for a guy that, is among the league leaders in touches per game, among big men, has to lead the league in assists. If we're not including, including everyone, I would assume that he probably does. So that's good. He does so much, and that's really the reason you consider Blake Griffin, because you don't get many big men out there that are averaging 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists per game with upside for legitimate triple-double upside. Who knows if this game stays close? Detroit is a 10-point favorite here, and Blake would definitely sit the fourth. I'll probably have 5% or so. I don't think I'm going to go too heavy on Blake because that price tag is kind of prohibitive. And it's not like Davis and Giannis are that much more expensive, but they are that much more consistent. So that'll probably be the decision maker or the tiebreaker there when it comes to who I'm going to pay up for, is who has the floor that I can trust, but also the ceiling. And it's those two guys. Larry Nance, the minutes I'm not so certain of. I don't know what's going to happen here. Chetty Osman last game was that the game he came off the bench? Yeah, came off the bench. They said he'd be limited. Well, played 24 minutes. If he comes off the bench again and Nance starts, then I will probably still have some interest in him. It's tough. He played 26 minutes. Chetty played 24, but that game was a monster blowout, so we don't really have good idea of what's happening with this. But Nance is still a good enough per minute producer that I'm going to have some interest there. And then another cheap guy, definitely risky, but he's dropped below 4K, is Marvin Bagley. He can give you really bad numbers, but if he gets some run, and he played 27 minutes last game, assuming some was due to blowouts, but he's another guy that's tough to figure out in terms of rotations. He's a good player. He's a good basketball player. The minutes haven't been there, but he's sub 4K. Any value here? Let me just make sure we're not glossing over any value before we move on. I'll probably get some questions about Harrison Barnes, but I never want to play him, especially not against Memphis. Derek Favors is cheap. Don't have an issue with that against Indiana. And I think that's really all the guys that are worth pointing out. Always some tertiary guys, but nobody else great. It's a bad position, Dan. It really is.
Yep, and one that hopefully some value pops up somewhere, and this is a place we can punt, but otherwise feels like Giannis and Anthony Davis are two sort of interchangeable parts at the top end that if you're not playing them at center or small forward, respectively, can be plugged in here at least to get you the upside. You mentioned a couple other guys with the possibility. Oh, man, this is rough. TJ Warren, how you doing, buddy? 6,400. All right, fine. We're going to move on. I'm not going to dwell here.
Warren's actually been looking really good.
He's playing a ton of minutes. He is playing a ton of minutes.
I'm glad you brought that up. We really should have mentioned that. I mean, the blowout, again, there's risk. It's a true concern. They're 12-point dogs on the road. I'm not really happy about that, but he's playing really well. You just mentioned that his minutes have been really, really high. So both of that bodes well for him. And even in games where they get out of the gate really slow and the whole team is sucking, Warren has actually been the one, surprisingly, that has been kind of holding things together and keeping them semi-competitive. We saw it against OKC a couple games ago. We've seen it quite a bit. He's made 10 field goals in 3 straight games, and he's taking a bunch of shots, but he's shooting at a high percentage. It's always possible that his production just falls off a cliff and we're back to the same Warren that we knew from before, especially given that his peripherals are pretty volatile as well. He's been blocking a lot of shots though, and getting enough rebounds to keep him in the mix, keep him relevant. But you're right. At that price tag, which is not crazy, you don't love it, but it's not crazy at all for a guy playing upwards of 40 minutes and taking 15 to 20 shots. Good call on that.
Well, every once in a while. Blind squirrel, nut found. Let's move on to exactly. That's why I'm here. Center spot. We mentioned Joel Embiid slapping around other centers in a swollen hand here. I assume he plays. Like, there doesn't seem to be any notes saying that he is legitimately out or potentially out here, but he has obviously the past injury history with the 76ers, and maybe they rest him for one reason or another. He's up at 11-1. I assume so too. He
said the same thing after the Utah game. They asked him how he was feeling, and he said, my wrist is in a lot of pain, and it's been hurting for a while. He joked saying maybe I'll start shooting lefty, but that was before the Charlotte game, and he played 40 minutes. We could see his shooting suffer a little bit. That's possible. He shot 30, 35, and 39% over his last 3 games, but he also has 57 fantasy points and a 60 fantasy point game mixed in there with a 45 fantasy point game. But that was when he got in foul trouble and sat for a large stretch of the second half. Then, even though he only played 26 minutes, look at the production from an efficiency standpoint, and he averaged 1.72 fantasy points per minute. On the season, Joel Embiid, it's still not getting as much attention as he deserves. On the season, he's averaging 55.3 fantasy points per game. He's averaging 1.6 fantasy points per minute, and that's with 35 minutes per game. So he's expensive, but I mean, there's no way as much as I think DeAndre Ayton's going to be a monster, I don't think there's any possibility that he can go in there and even remotely competently defend him. On the season, Phoenix has just been bludgeoned by centers, second most points. They're giving up a good amount of rebounds. I think the 8th most rebounds, and you can just keep going. You want to talk about block shots. Phoenix is also allowing a lot of block shots. Everything here just bodes well for Embiid. There really isn't anything that I don't like here. And I also expect him to get to the line a lot. I mean, that has just buoyed his production every single night. When he's not shooting well, he's still getting to the line 10, 15, 20, 23 times per game. It's insane.
All right. And I think he's just so much fun to watch play the game. But what about the rest of the position here? We don't have the Nets, who I like to target, obviously, with centers, as does most of the daily fantasy world. What's the matchup you're looking at most of all? Is it a Steven Adams at 7,500? DeAndre Ayton has the matchup on the other side of Embiid down there at 6,500. There's Gobert, Jokic, Drummond, plenty of top flight talent here at center. Who do you got as some of your top plays?
Yeah, I still like DeAndre Ayton quite a bit. And price is too low. And when the price is that low, the matchup and blowout concern isn't as much of an issue. And another thing too is I've said this a lot on the podcast, but it bears repeating. DeAndre Ayton is still getting some fourth quarter run and blowouts. He's 7K on DraftKings, by the way, which is fine. Even though you can't flex a guy, you can't play two centers. But Ayton's getting 30, 32 minutes in blowouts. And then in close games, he's playing 36, 38 minutes. So even if this game blows out, you still have a bit of a cushion the floor there. And you would think that Philly has done a really good job of limiting opposing centers, but no team has allowed more points to centers than the Sixers this year. Only the Pelicans have allowed more rebounds to opposing centers this year. Block shots. Only the Rockets have allowed more block shots to opposing centers than the Sixers this year. No team is allowing more field goal attempts to the position than the Sixers, and only 3 teams are allowing a higher field goal percentage. So yeah, a really good spot. And to kind of put the cherry on top, only the Suns are allowing more free throw attempts to opposing centers. That is how badly beaten the Sixers have been by starting centers this year. And Ayton comes into this at a cheap price point. I'm definitely going to have quite a bit of him. I don't see how I couldn't. The foul trouble is a concern against Embiid. So many guys get into foul trouble. But that's my only issue here. When the blowout's not a concern, there isn't much you can get worried about.
Any other names here as you start to formulate that player pool that you'll have for the deep dive as you write on Monday? Any other standouts or potential plays in the likes of a Drummond or a Jokic or any of the other centers eligible here?
Yeah, Marc Gasol is another one. Just been wildly consistent this year, and you like that. He is playing the second of a back-to-back. He did play 36 minutes yesterday, had a huge game, 26, 13, and 3 with 3 blocks and 2 steals. So Gasol's price tag is pretty favorable. Drummond is expensive, but we'd be remiss to not mention him because of how good he's been. Facing Cleveland, that's a really, really good spot. He 20-20'd on him, actually 26-22 against them earlier this season, not too long ago. I think I'm still going to get a little bit of Drummond in there. There's no way I'll have a lot because the price tag does make it difficult. But I actually like Drummond more than I like Blake because he's been very reliable. You're still getting a $400 discount. He plays around the basket, and he really pads his numbers with those peripherals and rebounds, even if he's not scoring. But amazingly with Andre Drummond this year, Dan, it's not like Andre Drummond is just taking 8 shots per game like we'd seen before, and you hope that he makes 6 of them. No, he is averaging 15.5 field goal attempts per game compared to previous seasons. If you just took Drummond's career averages, right, he's averaging 10.8 field goal attempts per game and 13.7 points. This year he's at 18.9 points and 15.5 field goal attempts. He's also getting to the line 5.1 times per game. We love that too. And of course, his rebounding numbers are insane. So I don't think Drummond's a crazy play at all. Yeah, he's expensive, but I will definitely have some interest in him simply due to how easily he could go for 25 and 20 with a couple of steals, blocks, and assists mixed in along the way. And you're pretty happy with that.
Makes sense to me. I think there's a ton of upside with a lot of these centers. It really is shown each and every slate. Any cheaps worthwhile here as potential utilities on DraftKings or plays that allow you to get up to the likes of Anthony Davis and Giannis, depending on your lineup construction?
I mean, Fox is not your prototypical answer there, but he's still way too cheap. Kevin Huerter's 3,300. Bogdan Bogdanovic is, as we talked about, 4K, and I think in a close game he gives you 25 to 28 minutes. Tyreek Evans, if Oladipo is out. Those guys right now in terms of value, I'll throw Shelvin Mack into the mix as well. Those would be the guys right now that stand out to me as your best value options. And we still are going to, a lot of news is going to break. things are going to change. But if you're trying to build, preliminary lineups while you're listening to the show, I would definitely look to work in a couple of those guys.
All right, and we'll do the 10K or above challenge here, taking Westbrook out of the mix as he's out. Griffin, Paul George, Embiid, Giannis, AD. Who's your favorite 10K, five-figure salaried player of this slate?
Yeah, I thought you were going to forget, but no, 2 straight days. Would you look at
this? See, I'm not sleeping.
No,
I have 3 kids. I drink way too much, and here we are.
You're a professional, though. You're a professional. I'm going to go with, and my projections also are going to go with Anthony Davis, but it's not as easy as it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll keep it quick. The reason that it's not as easy as it seems is Joel Embiid. And I think everyone, including myself at times, is afraid to put him in that the same category from a fantasy standpoint as Giannis and Davis. So you see his price tag almost identical, and you're like, yeah, but why would I play Embiid when I could play this guy's? Well, I would almost bet that Embiid has more 60 fantasy point games than Davis this year. And I'm almost certain that he has more than Giannis Antetokounmpo. So before we go, now I just have to figure this out.
I was going to say, there's no way you're leaving that hanging out there.
So Embiid has games of 60 fantasy points or more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm counting 59.8. So 8. Remember that number, Dan. And then these are the amount of game. These are the amount of 50 plus games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12. Okay. So what do we got? 8 and 12?
Yep.
All right. Anthony Davis, 60 plus fantasy points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He has 7. And then above 50, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then Giannis, last one here. So right now, Joel Embiid leads that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, also, he has played more games, so only being fair.
Correct.
Giannis, though, above 60, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 games. 4 games above 60 this year. So my point is that Joel Embiid, even though we get a little bit nervous seeing that price point, has had just as much, if not more, upside on a consistent basis than anyone in the league this year.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's been a lot talked about in DFS over the years about bias, right? And I remember one of my harsh welcomes to the industry was by Mike Leone about, it was actually season-long baseball, about I enjoyed drafting players that I'd watched. And Leone correctly pointed out to me that, well, that's your bias showing that you prefer players that you've watched, and think of all the hundreds, if not thousands of players you haven't watched who you're not drafting. And so our biases get in the way. And I will admit with Embiid, to what you're saying, I have a bias that he gets injured a lot and he doesn't play back-to-backs and he's not playing 30-plus minutes. All of those things are out the window this year. He's playing 30-plus minutes. He's playing back-to-backs. He's playing at a higher level than 99% of the league. And that price point isn't that crazy. It's probably spot on, if not even a little low for the potential talent level. I will say all that with the caveat, if the hand injury is legitimate, if it's a questionable status here and he does play, that may be a deciding factor for me to say, I'm not as comfortable with it where I might be. But I think it's more than a legitimate take, sure.
He's just that good.
Yeah,
he's just
and he's
that
been playing basketball for like 7 years, which
exactly.
Is
exactly. Oh, and also Davis leads the league in minutes this year, so that's a big deal, and we love seeing that. Giannis is playing 32.4 minutes per game. I'm assuming a bunch of that is blowout related, probably up around 34 or so. But unlike seasons past where Embiid's minutes were a concern and back-to-backs being rested and this and that or being limited were a concern, he's playing 35 minutes a game. I mean, that's pretty outstanding given all of the concerns we had before. So now you got a guy that's 11K, and it's not that He's not limited anymore. He's taking as many shots as humanly possible. Jimmy Butler's arrival hasn't made much of a difference. And Joel Embiid's played the 14th most minutes in the entire league.
I do enjoy Jimmy's Butler. I think that is a very good nickname for him moving forward. Who is that? It's Jimmy's Butler. It's fine. It's fine. It's
not bad.
He's cleaning up after Simmons and Embiid. Everything's fine. Just let him do what he's doing.
Like it.
All right, great. I think as always, great stuff from Dave. You can find him on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Find me if you so choose at Dan Strafford. My wife's been away for 3.5 days. She's back Monday night. She had to take care of some family business down in Florida, and she's actually driving back a car from down there. And I love my wife. Dave, you're aware of that. I'm happily married, but I have never wanted to see her more than after the span of days with the 3 kids. But they're beautiful. They're beautiful human beings, but they need to sleep more and talk less. With that said, you'll find Emac and Adam in our place on Tuesday morning. Wednesday morning, Dave and I. Thursday morning, we have to decide the plan for the podcast. I hope many of you won't listen because you're celebrating Thanksgiving and enjoying family time. But for those of you who do, we're happy to have you. And then Friday morning, DFS strategy show will be your guiding light. Dave and I will not record Thursday nights. Then you get Saturday, you get Emac and Adam getting you ready for that Saturday slate. So plenty of ways to get content from awesemo.com. One of them is a week for free with the promo code EARLYBIRD. With all that said, wish you best of luck on, what day is that? Monday night, 9-game NBA slate. We'll be back with you right here on the DFS Early Bird.